equations is completing the square. Completing the square has several steps, as you can see. The first step is going to be to get all the variable terms on one side and a constant terms on the other. So in our first example, we're going to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. So we get x squared plus 6x, I'm going to leave a gap, equals negative 4. Then off to the side I want to, next I want to see if a is equal to 1. A is the coefficient in front of the x squared, and it is 1, so I can go on to the next step, which is to find b divided by 2, which I'm going to use to factor. So I take b, which is 6, so 6 divided by 2 is 3. This is the number I will use to factor. And then I'm going to take 3 squared, which is 9, and this is what I add to both sides. So I'm going to add 9 here, add 9 here. The next step is to factor the variable side. Remember, it's a perfect square, and it factors into, since b was positive, it will be x plus b over 2. That b over 2 number was 3. So this will factor into x plus 3 squared equals negative 4 plus 9 is 5. And next I'm going to take the square root of both sides because I'm at the square root method. So square root of both sides. So x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 5, since that does not simplify. Then subtract 3 from both sides. Remember, that goes in front of the plus minus. So we end up with x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5. In our second example, we want to get all the variable terms on one side, constant terms on the other. So I'll start by subtracting 3 from both sides. So we get 2x squared minus 2x equals negative 3. Then I check to see, is a equal to 1? A is the coefficient in front of the x squared, and it's a 2 right now, so I'll need to divide each term by 2. So that gives me x squared minus x equals negative 3 halves. Next step, find b divided by 2, which I'll use to factor, and then square that, which is what I add to both sides. B at this point is negative 1. So I take negative 1 divided by 2, and I use that to factor. So that's negative 1 half. And then I need to square that, negative 1 half squared, which is positive 1 over 4, and that's what I add to both sides. So I'll need to add 1/4, add 1/4. Now I can factor the variable side using perfect squares. Since b was negative 1, it's going to be x minus b over 2. So x minus 1/2 squared equals, I need to add negative 3 halves plus 1/4. In order to do that, I need like terms, so I need a common denominator. So I'll have negative 3 halves would be negative 6/4 plus 1/4, and that will give me 5/4. So x minus 1/2 squared equals 5/4. Oops, I left my negative. Negative 6/4 plus 1/4 is negative 5/4. So negative 5/4. And now I'm at the step where I can take the square root of both sides. So I'll take the square root of the left side, square root of the right side. On the left side, I get x minus 1/2. On the right side, I'm going to take the square root of negative 5/4, which is the same thing as taking the square root of negative 5 over the square root of 4. Now the square root of negative 5, the only part that will simplify is the negative. And remember that negatives under the radical means that it comes out in front and turns into an I. So I will have plus or minus I square roots of 5 in the numerator then the denominator, square root of 4, is 2. Now to solve for x, I will add 1/2 to both sides. So I get x equals 1/2 plus or minus I square root of 5 over 2. And then when we have a problem that looks like this with the same denominator, even if it doesn't have the same denominator, we'll need to get a common denominator. We're going to write that all divided by 2. So I have 1 divided by 2 plus or minus I square root of 5 divided by 2, which I can rewrite as 1 plus or minus I square root of 5 all divided by 2. Our last method that we've used for solving quadratic equations is the quadratic formula. We had chosen 2 problems to solve by the quadratic formula. The first step is that our problem needs to be in standard form. So on our first problem, we'll have to subtract 5x from both sides and subtract 12 from both sides. So we'll have 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 equals 0. And then we need to use the quadratic formula. So we'll need to identify that a is 2, b is negative 5, and c is negative 12. Then we'll work through that quadratic formula that's right there. So x equals the opposite of b, which will be positive 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 12, and then all divided by 2 times a. Then we're going to work through this starting with simplifying the discriminant. You want to watch the signs in the discriminant because I'm really subtracting this product of 3 numbers, and when we have 2 negatives like we have, negative 4 times 2 times negative 12, that's going to end up being a positive value. So really what I have in the discriminant is going to be 25 plus whatever 4 times 2 times 12 is, which is 96. So 25 plus 8 times 12 is 96. So my next step is going to say 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 96 is 121, and that's all over 4. Next I can simplify the square root of 121, so that makes it x equals 5 plus or minus 11 all over 4. Since these are like terms, I have to go ahead and finish this problem, so I need to do 5 plus 11, so x equals 5 plus 11, which is 16 over 4, which gives me x equals 4, and I need to do x equals 5 minus 11, which is negative 6, divided by 4. So that will simplify to be negative 3/2. So my 2 values for x are 4 and negative 3/2. The second example that we chose is already in standard form. So I'm just going to identify that a is 3, b is negative 5, and c is negative 3. And then start with the quadratic formula. So x will equal the opposite of b, so x is positive 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which was 3, times c, which was negative 3, all divided by 2 times a, which was 3. So x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of, again we have 2 negatives under here, so I'll have negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, times negative 3 again is positive 36. So it's 25 plus 36, which is 61. So 61 all over 6. And we need to see if 61 can break down. 61 is a prime number, So it's not going to be able to simplify that.